Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to a retro episode of World's Finest True Believers. When we moved the show to the Geek Ultimate Alliance network, we could not easily drop all the previous shows into the feed. So what we decided to do was to drop them every other week so new listeners can get a chance to hear them, and our veteran listeners of the show can revisit some of these golden oldies. If you like the show, please give us a review and rate us on Apple Podcast or whatever your podcatcher choice may be. I hope you enjoy this retro episode, and I'll see you all next week with a brand new episode of World's Finest True Believers. Hello, and welcome to World's Finest True Believers. Each episode, a guest and myself will discuss one of our favorite comic book arcs or graphic novels from any publisher. My name is Chris. Thanks for joining us. Now let's get started. So since this is my first official episode from the intro, I want to take a minute to thank a few people who helped me get to this point. David C. Robertson, who helped me design the podcast show art, which I think is awesome, and I love it. He has two podcasts, DC On Screen and the Star Trek Universe podcast. And you can find him on Twitter at David C. Robertson. I also want to thank Lisa from the I Love That Movie podcast, whose show format inspired my podcast, and you can find her on Twitter at AYA Lisa Cosplay. Additionally, I want to thank everyone at the Suicide Squadcast Network. I'll say their name and then their handles so you can follow them. Scott, who's at Scott DC27. Tim, who is at Allenfire. Brent, who is at Brentac Prime. Ray, who is at the Flightcast. Chris, who is at Revrim. And my guest, who will introduce himself shortly, has provided me great advice on podcast equipment, and you can find all their podcasts on suicidesquadcast.com. I highly recommend each one of their podcasts on this network. And finally, I want to thank my wife, who's been encouraging me for a very long time to do this podcast. So without this, can't do it without her. And so without further ado, I want to introduce my very first guest. This is Jordan Funk. Say hi, Jordan.
What's going on, guys? How you doing, Chris? How you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for being my first guest on this new journey.
Oh, dude, no thanks necessary. Hey, man, first of all, I also want to thank you for making it easy on me with Chris being my co-host of the DC Comics Squadcast. You guys make it easy for me to remember names here, too, so awesome, man. But no, seriously, thank you for inviting me on, man. It's a pleasure. I'm glad you're following, your heart, doing a nice little passion project. I think it's something that, people need to do more of in the world. And so I'm glad you're starting out here, man. You got to start somewhere. And, we'll get butterflies are going, but we'll go ahead. We'll shake those off once we start talking some comics and all that jazz. So, yeah, man, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Good. So why don't you tell us about yourself? As I said earlier, you do have a podcast on the Suicide Squadcast Network.
I do. That show is DC Comics Squadcast. I co-host it with my good buddy Chris Rimmer, and we just talk about DC comics that come out weekly. We try to stay current with most everything. We don't go over everything. Unfortunately, Chris and I do not have the funds nor the time to do that at the moment, but we do try to cover as much as we can. And here, I'll make the announcement here first. We actually just recorded a Young Justice Spotlight yesterday, so highlighting issues 1 through 5, and we will be adding Young Justice to the roster, along with some of those new books that have been coming out, Year of the Villain, Deceased, and Batman and the Outsider. So we will be adding those to the roster of things going on. But aside from that, man, yeah, I co-host that podcast, but I am a bookkeeper and a licensed real estate agent here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And that's kind of my profession. Sort of got into that when we moved out here. But mainly, man, when I get home, I love me all things comics. I'm a big music nerd as well. Big score nerd, too, definitely. And, I say that proudly. And then I love me some sports as well, food, and just, talking with friends, having a good time. I think that this long form conversation thing is sort of a lost art. So I'm glad to see that it's sort of making its way back. But yeah, man, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I love talking comics, everything pretty much, and yes, I am a sports fan. I'll just get it out here now. I'll give you guys my 4 major teams, and I'll sort of give them an order of least important to most important. So we got least important. I grew up a Chicago Bulls fan watching Michael Jordan. Hockey team, I live in Pittsburgh, and I root for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Have never really had a legitimate hockey team to root for. Loved Brodeur when I was growing up, but have since switched over to the Penguins. And then two that would tie for me are, well, actually, we'll go second. We'll go to Detroit, the Detroit Lions. Grew up a big Barry Sanders fan, and then number one, a New York Yankees fan. Got pinstripes in my blood. And no, I do not hate all Red Sox fans that are out there. I respect the game of baseball. I respect you guys and your teams. So all fandom is good, man. All fandom is good. And so, yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And thanks for giving us a preview of what you guys got going on at DC Comics Squadcast. We'll definitely, as I said, highly check them out. And so one of my first questions I want to ask guests is, what was the first comic or graphic novel that hooked you on to being a comic fan?
Oh man, that's a good one. One, I grew up actually reading a bunch of Spider-Man and X-Men comics with my brother. And I don't remember what titles they were, to be honest with you. I do remember that Spider-Man was his first introduction to Venom, actually. We did have that. We had just a bunch of comics I think we had picked up from some yard sales, and so that's how we came to gather all those. So I used to read those with him when we had some downtime, and then Batman the Animated Series started, and that just got me hooked into Batman, all things Batman. And then kind of not lost comics throughout, middle and high school, but just sort of backed away from it a little bit as I was getting into, trying out for baseball. I just started guitar lessons, so I was getting into all that jazz. But then actually when I moved to New York City after me and my fiance had graduated college and we moved there, my future in-laws actually pointed me to, they're like, hey, I know you like the Dark Knight movies and everything like that, and you're a big fan of Batman the Animated Series. They're like, why don't you, there's a couple of really good comic shops in New York City. And I was like, oh my God, I never had really a local comic book shop growing up. So yeah, this is great. So they're like, go to Forbidden Planet down in New York City. So I went down there, didn't really have any idea what I was doing. I was just like, look, I just want to sort of get caught up on some of these trades and collections that are going on. I can't be a weekly guy, start right off the bat, especially in New York City, man. It's just like, I wasn't making enough then either. I shouldn't have really been buying what I was buying. Didn't really have the money for it, but hey, that's what credit cards are for. And so threw that sucker on there. That's bad advice. Please don't listen to that, everybody. But no, and I asked him, big Batman fan, just went up to one of the employees and was just like, can you get me started? Give me three stories. And he pointed me to The Long Halloween, Dark Knight Returns, and he's like, actually, there's a really great run going on right now. I believe it was when they were at the 0 year phase of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and he was just like, pick up this Court of Owls book. He's like, read the other two first to just sort of get yourself re-cemented. He's like, you've been watching all the films and stuff like that. He's just like, yeah, and then read that The Court of Owls last. So of course I ignored him and got home and brought this with me to work on the subway and all that jazz. And I couldn't put it down after I started picking it back up. So those three really sort of got me back into it. And then after I read Court of Owls, it actually, helped me rediscover, a new love or an old love. But, I started collecting then. And then, once I was able to afford it, I could start doing weekly from there. So I really got to say, man, it's Court of Owls is really the one that got me back into collecting full time around 2014 or so.
And so that leads us to exactly what we're talking about is the first arc of Batman in the New 52, the Court of Owls.
Yes, sir.
So no, this is a great choice, and you kind of went into exactly kind of how you discovered it. It's what got you back into and got you reinvigorated into comics. That's really cool. So I'm going to read a synopsis. There's lots of different ones, but this is what I thought would kind of give us an air mystery of what it's about. After a series of brutal murders rocks Gotham City, Batman begins to realize that perhaps these crimes go far deeper than appearances suggest. As the Caped Crusader begins to unravel this deadly mystery, he discovers a conspiracy going back to his youth and beyond, to the origins of the city he's sworn to protect.
Yeah, it's a great synopsis. I think that definitely talks about what happens here in this first volume. But as you know, it goes so much deeper. But we'll get into that, when we discuss the other volumes. I believe we're just talking volume 1 today.
Yes.
But yes, this is, man, it's a crazy story, and one that just really I love, man. It's definitely one of my favorites.
No, it was a great choice to start the podcast with. So, want to kind of talk about the writer, artist, and inker. Give credit where credit is due for the
Sure.
creators. Writer is Scott Snyder. Artist is Greg Capullo, and the inker is Jonathan Glapian. So we'll start with Scott Snyder. Do you know anything kind of background on Scott Snyder?
Well, I know that he, for this, I just kind of put down some of his other works that he's done at other places. I know that is actually an intellectual as well. He teaches, surprisingly,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know the universities offhand. I think he teaches in New York. Is it Massachusetts? And then someplace else, I think. I don't know. He teaches though, and he's just, I don't know. He's
Yeah,
my favorite writer right now, man, and has been for a while. So
yeah, no, you're right. I mean, he graduated from Ivy League. He graduated from Brown University with a degree in creative writing. So he's definitely in the right
that's for
genre.
sure.
And it was interesting. I found an interesting story. He then started working at Walt Disney World, and he initially worked as a custodian, and then moved on in it. And he said that the Disney World stint strongly influenced his writing. He later recalled that it did a world of good for my writing. All the things I ended up writing about, those things that are deeply frightening to me: fear of commitment, growing up, fear of losing loved ones, the wonder and terror of falling in love. All of it was constantly being played out all around me in this weird, cartoonish, magnifying way at Disney.
You know what, man? That's crazy. I'd never heard that quote before. To be honest with you, it makes sense. You know?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And you're right. He teaches. He teaches at NYU, New York University, Columbia University, and Sarah Lawrence College. So he's already got a busy schedule, let alone
Oof.
finding the time to teach.
Yeah, I know, right? Can you imagine having to prep those lectures and like it would be super neat to take one of his classes. Like, I wonder if he works out beats of like stories that like when he gets at an impasse in a story. I wonder if he brings it in and like has the class like workshop it with him or something along those lines.
That would be
That would
interesting.
be crazy. I mean, probably not for like Batman or something like that, but for one of his other books like Witches or After Death or something like that, maybe one of those that's sort of not huge, although everything he does at this point is pretty big. So, yeah, I mean, definitely interesting. But no, you could sort of hear that too in the way that he presents himself. I like listening to his interviews. He's very well spoken, and he knows how to get his point across. He knows how to leave a lot of the fat out, you know what I mean? And he knows when to get right to the meat of it. So he's definitely one of my favorites right now. And actually, I'll say this about Capullo too. And I know we'll get to him in a second, but and I know my fiance, when she listens to this, it's gonna make her go like, oh god, because I know that she starts thinking about it. I actually want to get a Batman sleeve tattoo. I want to get it. I want to start with a half sleeve, but Greg Capullo's Batman is my art of choice for my sleeve, and so his art, man, is just phenomenal, and I love his Joker as well. So I'm gonna see what I can sort of come up with there. But yeah, she's not too happy about that. She's like, because I don't have any tattoos, so she's like, I know you without tattoos, so when you do get one, it's gonna be like kind of weird to get used to. And I'm like, yeah, but the thing that's nice is we actually have very talented artists here in Pittsburgh. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Ink Master on Spike, or what I think is now Paramount Network or something.
Yeah, I've heard of
I
it.
think there was one of the contestants, either from season 1 or season 2. She came in second place. And dude, her tattoo shop is literally a 5-minute walk from my house.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. But that also, when you're on a show like that and you get that, you do that well, I'm sure your appointment book fills right up. You can charge your prices, whatever you want from there. So it's one of those things that, like, when all my debts and stuff are taken care of, that's when I'll get to the tattoo. I can't, we got a wedding to plan for here in a year. So it's one of those things that can definitely hold off for the moment.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That'll be cool. Yeah, when you finally go down that road, I'm sure you'll be posting about the design and what it finally looks like.
For
so
sure.
We'll definitely pay attention to
For
that.
sure.
But yeah, a few more things before we get to Capullo. He is a short story writer, at least before he got into the comics business. So I've never read any of it, but I'd be very curious to see some of his stuff. Started at Marvel in 2009. His first genre was actually a one-shot focusing on the very first Human Torch as part of Marvel's 70th anniversary. Moved on to Vertigo, publishing American Vampire, and then started as writer of Detective Comics with issue number 871. #1. And as we say, the rest is history.
Yes, it is. He's a very talented man. I don't think we can really say that, and that really goes for everybody that's involved. In putting a book together, everybody's extremely talented. But yeah, he's got a way with words, man, that just resonates with me. And I know we'll discuss this a little bit later too. But he has a way of taking a story and a lore that's already been there, and he has a way of adding to it without making it feel forced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes people come up with these sort of crazy out there, villains that might not last, or just these, wacky ideas. But he hasn't found a way to stick. I mean, you look at Batman Who Laughs now too. That's hugely successful. I think that's been the highest selling book, at least from DC standpoint. I'm not necessarily sure about the Marvel numbers, but that's been one of the highest selling DC books since it's come out. So he's just got a way of resonating with audiences. And Justice League is fantastic too. So
so happy when he came on board, just because of what he did with Batman and bringing it to Justice League.
Absolutely. He has a way of it. And he can do this with small characters. Like, he can still make their world feel epic in a way, but still isolated to Gotham City. So, like, Gotham City still feels like epic and huge, but it's all isolated in Gotham. But now that he's on Justice League, dude, it's just like, let's take everything that we can and just blow it up to 1,000,000. And let's literally blow everything up, and let's have all these new different ideas and explanations for why things are the way they are, and they're a little vague before. Let's give them some background. So I think he's got a knack to be able to do that, and I think that's definitely one of his specialties. And he's got a way with words that he knows what words to put down on the page. He doesn't give you a whole lot of exposition. He does in some issues, but it's one of those things where everything that's on the page is meant to be there. So he does a great job with that.
No, you're right. So let's move on to Greg Capullo, and any kind of interesting background you found out about Greg Capullo?
Well, when I first started getting into this, I was like, this style looks very familiar, and it was actually from Spawn. My brother had a couple Spawn comics, and that was one of his favorite characters, and I was like, just the way that this is drawn, I was like, it reminds me of something. What is that? And so I was talking with my brother, and I was just like showing him this book, and he's like, dude, I think that's the same writer from Spawn. So we looked it up. Sure enough, it was. So that was definitely an interesting little nugget for me to find out. I also know that he just like oozes rock and roll from his from the tats to the mustache to the muscles to his guitar solos that he throws up on Instagram. And he's a big Zakk Wylde fan, who I'm a huge fan of as well. Guitarist, most notably for Black Label Society and Ozzy Osbourne. But those are just some things that I've sort of just known from having followed Greg for a while now and his work. And I don't really know that I have any little trivia nuggets. Oh, and he's a big coffee guy too. Very, big, strong coffee. The type that, like, I don't know, is radioactive. It's so strong. He's definitely that's definitely some of his favorite stuff. But aside from that, I don't really know a whole lot else. I'm sure you got a couple little fun facts there for us.
Yeah, just a few. No, that was interesting. You can definitely tell. I mean, when you go, Batman metal, Dark Knight metal. I mean, it says it all right there that he's definitely goes hardcore.
That's true.
But I found out he's been drawing Batman since age 4.
Wow.
He talked about that's how much in love with the character he's been. He also did a stint at Marvel doing some work with X-Force and What If, and he was there for a little while and then did some independent work. And like you said, he joined up with Todd McFarlane and did Spawn. So I was reading some things that he talked about, how people were nervous about him taking on Batman because, oh my God, they're going to make his cape so huge. That's the guy from Spawn. He's not going to know that's not how Batman is. But never let that keep him down. And I agree. I think his design of Batman was different enough.
Yeah.
But it definitely he definitely kind of like Snyder. He has respect for the history.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, for people with those kinds of criticisms, have you ever seen Tim Sale's Batman? Like, it's like one of those things where it's not even, it's more of, dude, I'm a cape fanatic. So like, make the capes as big as you want. I don't care, man. It's something so romantic about like character, just like, when they're in their pose, or they're like, like Batman, for example, since we're talking about Batman, he's standing on the gargoyle, leg out, man. He's doing the Captain Morgan. He's got his, his hulking physique and I just love the way that the cape, I just love the way that it flows, man. It just is one of those things for me where it's bigger the better. And Spawn and Batman are have a couple of different similarities, so I think it's one of those things. It's just funny what people think before anything ever comes out, man. People have their preconceived notions about stuff, and it's like, this guy's a professional, he knows what he's doing. But even if they don't, it's not like they can't go back in and retcon it. I don't know, that's one of those things where it's funny how certain rumors and stuff get out there, and then artists are like, that's crazy, whatever. I'm a fan just you guys, I know it. So but no, man, I'm a big fan of Capullo's work as well. And for those of you who haven't read Spawn or dug into his work with Todd McFarlane, man, I believe he was on it from 16 through 20. There's a short brief, I just wrote down here how long he was on it for. It's basically 16 through 200 with a couple breaks here and there. And it's just that's a long time. That's a long time. Basically as long as he's been doing Batman now. So, and he just did, I believe it was last year or 2 years ago, he did the Swamp Thing Halloween special as well, the Halloween Giant, that 80-page giant that came out. So he draws a mean Swamp Thing too, man. He's just got a knack for that sort of dark element in art.
Cool. And and then the last contributor to this is Jonathan Glapion. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, as the inker. And I did not know, I hate to say, my knowledge of it always seems like the inker sometimes gets forgotten, but I want to make sure, at least on this podcast, we acknowledge the creators of this. So I had to do a little research on him. He also began his career at Image, and he did contribute to inks of The Curse of Spawn. He spent several years at Marvel inking Elektra, The Hand, Ultimate X-Men. And since 2007, he's been on a wide variety of DC titles, from this New 52 Batman, Batgirl, Superman, Wonder Woman. So he's got a very, very good career going. He's been nominated for and received several awards, such as the Inkwell Awards 2010 and the Most Adaptable Inker Award, as well as being nominated for a 2013 Harvey Award for Best Inker. So they do bring out what our artists and our pencilers do. So we want to make sure to give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely, man. And thank you for going in and doing that research. I will admit I did not necessarily do that research on him, but just right off the bat, man, you got some talent when it seemed like Marvel just was like, here, you want? They're like, okay, talent, scooping them up. So here, take Elektra. That's already a big book, man. Elektra and The Hand to just sort of start off with, and then to go into, you said he was in X-Force, I think, for a little while, or
Ultimate X-Men.
Dude, those are huge books. So man, what a way to sort of jumpstart, and now to hop over to DC and do some of the titular characters there. Man, you can't ask for anything better. But his work speaks for itself, man. I mean, you look at these pages and they're freaking gorgeous, and especially the way that the shadows are used in this book in particular, phenomenal. So he does some wonderful work, and I'm glad that he was nominated for some awards because he deserves it.
Hey everyone. Before we go to the next topic, we are going to head into some ads that help the Geek Ultimate Alliance keep the lights on. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they sometimes can be a bit loud. So I want to give you a 3 count in order to give you the opportunity to turn your volume down before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be back in a little bit. Yeah, definitely. So let's definitely start to get into the Court of Owls. We'll start going in. Is there any, if for people who are thinking about pursuing this, heads up, we might be doing some spoilers later on. So, but if we wanted to give some people some background information to set this up, we mentioned that this was the Batman that relaunched in the New 52. So what would you recommend people kind of understanding first before they head into this?
Well, I would just sort of give them a heads up as to who the Court of Owls are. I actually snagged some stuff from Wikipedia, just a brief description of what the Court of Owls are. So, Court of Owls are a conspiracy that's controlled Gotham for centuries. They're essentially a violent cabal of Gotham's oldest and wealthiest families, who use murder and money to wield political influence throughout history, and their base of operations are through some of the oldest buildings throughout Gotham. And one of the things that they've done is they, in a way similar to Batman, whereas some people are like, no, they're real, and other people are like, no, they're not. And one thing that I thought was awesome was that they come up they have their own nursery rhyme, which is
Mhm.
beware the Court of Owls that watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadowed perch behind granite and lime. They watch you at your hearth. They watch you in your bed. Speak not a whispered word about them, or they'll send the talon for your head. So that's what I would say to sort of, somebody going into this is just it's Gotham based, Batman in Gotham, and for as well as this man thinks he knows Gotham, he's really sort of just scratching the surface. So that's sort of like a generic way to go into it if you don't want to talk about the Court of Owls or anything like that. It's just, he's getting ready to take on, bite off a lot more than he can chew at this point. And trust me, that's just barely scratching the surface insofar as, starting this story off and everything that is involved with it. Because there's a ton, but it's so wonderful, man. Like, I'm trying to think of different words to like come up with it other than just it's great for like murder mystery fans too, or like true crime fans. I think that anybody who really is just into any sort of mystery would really enjoy this book.
No, definitely. And with it kind of being a launching point, with Flashpoint, that would be kind of, if you want to kind of know why Batman's restarting at this,
Right.
definitely read that. Kind of a hard, we found out later, not as hard of a reboot as we thought.
Correct.
But I think of all the characters, Batman probably did not get the hard relaunch like some of the other characters got.
No.
In New 52, and so it's kind of his kind of timeline during that was always in question, but it never got fully addressed.
Yeah, and one thing that's sort of nice here and that you'll see is kind of been a theme going on. What's one of the things that Batman's best known for? I mean, it's his rogues gallery, right? And there's only so many stories you can do about the Joker. There's only so many stories you can do about now that I'm getting older, like people that are being used in the rogues gallery are changing. When I was younger, the main group of characters used to be essentially Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, Harvey, Catwoman. We're like the main group of villains. And now that I've gotten older, it's sort of changed a little bit. Whereas like you get a little more Killer Croc, you get a lot more Bane, you get a lot more Harley, because she's now been introduced. And it's one of those things that I thought was awesome. What a good way to sort of relaunch Batman, and let's give him a new couple of members of the Rogues Gallery, and let's really put him to the test and sort of do it in a way that he's sort of used to using his wealth and political influence to sort of keep himself out of the public eye and to, keep any sort of inkling away from him actually being Batman. But it's sort of now being, well, like, oh, okay, you thought you're special, that you're the first person to think of this? Well, guess again. No, this has actually been around here for centuries before you were born. So, think about that, which is super interesting.
Yeah, and I think it was a great kind of trying to do something different with Batman. I've always enjoyed Batman as a detective and as focusing on that kind of noir. And, in looking at creation of this arc, I found this kind of video from Sci-Fi Wire, Batman at 80, and Snyder talking about how and why he created this kind of his launching point for the New 52. He was saying that the Court of Owls represents Bruce's and Batman's worst fears come alive, of history coming back to get you, not learning the lessons of the past, and your home becoming a terrifying and strange. He wanted Gotham to be mysterious and weaponize it against Bruce. And as kind of you said, despite him thinking that he knows everything about Gotham, and the more he could bring the Wayne history to make it new and mysterious and scary, the more unsettling it would be to Bruce.
Oh yeah, and it is, and it's scary and unsettling for the reader too, because we feel like we all know Bruce and Batman so well, so you feel like you know what he knows. And so when this happens, you're like, that can't be right. And then you're like, oh my gosh, it might be right. Have I missed this? Was somebody laying this like foundation before this? What's going on? Because it ties in so well. But I guess that goes, again, as a credit to Snyder and Capullo and for being able to give him, this whole new chapter to open and this whole new chapter and to explore. So and to teach him, he could always learn. Like, I think that's one of the things that we all love about Batman so much, is for as much knowledge as the man has, he always learns something. And with that, you take away that lesson as well. And so for him to be completely out of the blue here, and oftentimes, there are a couple times in this book, and I'm sure we'll get to it, where he's Bruce, but he's got he's got all these abilities and stuff, but he's like, no, I'm out as Bruce Wayne right now. If something happens to me, I can't just like, I don't know, go into straight Batman mode. Like I have an image to protect as well. So he's like hampered by the fact that like I have all this stuff that I can't use at the time being. And that's also a testament to the Court of Owls as well, by, you know, just knowing when to strike, when not to strike, how precise they are. That's one of the things too. You're like, man, they are precise. Everything that they do has an intention behind it. And so that's why when they're able to best Batman at certain points, you're like, oh my gosh, that's pretty crazy. But then when he bests them, you're like, that's why Batman is awesome. That's why I love this character so much. You know, it's a nice yin and yang between both sides. And it's nice to sort of not get, because like, and we sort of see this, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as we explore the depths of the Court of Owls and stuff. But like the Court of Owls and Talon eventually get to a point where they're sort of like, right now they're cohesive, but they sort of get to a point where it's like they could, you know, Court of Owls could still be one thing, but Talons might necessarily be their own thing now. Like, you know what I mean? So like,
Oh yeah, definitely.
which is super interesting, because you get like, the thing that makes the court so scary is that they have this whole intellectual power, but they also have the physical fortitude with the talons to be able to take on Batman as well. And if you guys want any sort of experience with that and see it in action, Court of Owls, they did make a live action appearance on Gotham, but if you want to see them actually like take on Batman and you want to see Talons in action and stuff, watch Batman versus Robin. That's a great animated movie where they do make some appearances, and there's some wonderful fights in that movie too. So if you're into that, definitely check it out, which I'm sure you probably are since you're listening to the podcast. So check that out. You get a lot of good stuff there too. But sorry to go on a rant there, but it's
No.
man, I love it. It's a great addition to the Rose Gallery. I can't.
Mhm.
I don't think there's a better way to say it.
No, it's almost at the beginning. It's a faceless villain.
Yes.
You know, and so, you know, one more thing before we head into the kind of the plot and your favorite kind of
Sure.
moments in it. You know, he said his inspiration for this was based on his own personal experience coming back to New York City after he got the Batman gig, and how everything changed. He didn't know anyone else from his old neighborhood, and it made it very scary to him seeing a total transformation like that. And he wondered, you know, Bruce and Batman know Gotham now, but what about 5 years from now? And he wondered how unsettling and how powerful a villain that could make, and a destabilization of Gotham, Batman, and the reader, and how to make the reader kind of feel that destabilization that Batman and Bruce are going on.
Correct. Yeah. And what's nice about it too is they're sort of a more successful version of Ra's al Ghul, in a way, which is very interesting in the fact that it's just sort of been their plan to isolate this city and to, you know, use their wealth and political power to sort of guide things in their direction, but also make tough calls to send the city in whatever direction they think is best. And it's just a very, very interesting dynamic, and one that, like, now that I think of it too, I would have loved to see them in Batman Begins, but obviously that came out before this. But it's like, I'm just thinking about the way that the city was depicted and everything else, and how, you know, the political power and all that stuff was fruitful back then too. But it's also very pertinent to today's, in a way. Like you said, his sort of inspiration for this was heading back to New York, because I believe that's where he grew up. You know, he's a New York kid. And but it also makes me think of places like, you know, Detroit or Flint, Michigan, in a way, you know, where it's like we all knew there were problems in Flint for forever, right? And it just is now getting fixed 4 years later, after all these people have been knowingly damaged from not having clean water. And I mean, hell, we raised over $1 billion to send to, you know, Notre Dame in 2 days, 3 days, but we can't send $50 million to Flint to get the water situation there. It's like one of those things where you're just like, they're in such a deep political hole, you know, and that's part of the thing about Batman that's so wonderful too, is between him and Gordon and the Bat family just trying to get rid of this corruption. And yet it's like them being there as well, it cleans some of the corruption, but then it only digs it even deeper, because people then don't want them there. So it's like this vicious cycle that, like, every, you know, Batman makes a little dent, he takes one step back, he takes one step forward, takes 2 steps back, take 3 steps forward, take another 2 steps back, and then so on and so forth. But I think that's why these villains are a great addition, because they can also challenge him. It's not just a one-time thing. They're there, they exist, they're not going anywhere, They have influence in Gotham, and they're going to continue to have an influence in Gotham. And as we'll see in the upcoming volumes when we discuss it, they were ready for the worst possible case, which was just a full-blown assault on them, and they are ready to send a full-blown assault on Gotham as well. And it is ripe for the taking, especially when this book occurs.
No, definitely. I think we've definitely given everyone a good background and understanding. So I think it's finally we've teased them, we've given them the appetizer. I think it's finally time to start diving into the Court of Owls. And so why don't you talk about kind of your favorite parts or favorite kind of moments?
I don't know that I'm going to go in sequential order here, but
that's fine.
We're going to talk about a couple of different things. Some of my favorite parts. I really want to just point out these things in particular. I love the nursery rhyme. I really like the court and the Talon's designs respectively, and big fan of Capullo's art here. And I want to mention Jonathan Glapian's inks here as well, because they play a huge part in his art as well. Those are definitely some of my favorite parts of the book. Some of my favorite story moments is like we were talking about. I like that Batman doesn't believe that they're a thing. He's like, look, I looked for them when I was a kid after my parents were murdered. And you're like, wait, what? And you're just like, whoa, yeah, I could see him doing that. Like, he makes that sort of switch when it happens, and he's like, I didn't want to believe that it was just some random guy, that this was just some random act, that somebody somewhere had to do something like this. And
it's great that they factored it into his parents' murder.
Yes.
Like he had heard it. He said, I've looked for them. They don't exist. And he's just so confident that they do not exist. And it's very interesting.
To a point. Like to his demise in a way. At least, and we see when we get to the end of the first volume, how much he's underestimated his enemy, which goes against everything that Batman talks about and preaches and teaches. And I mean, I don't know about you. I love the moment in the book too where Dick calls him out on that. Dick is like, I think you're extremely underestimating your enemy here. And he's like, well, I don't know what you're talking. He's like, no, I know more than you. And that's when we get the backstory on it, where he's like, I know they don't exist because I looked for them and I found their place where they would hide their, where their meetings would be. And I busted in and there was nothing there but an empty room with a table, and he got locked in there for a week before Alfred found him, which was just like, it's like, whoa. But it also just points out to how strong-willed of a person Batman is. And once Bruce's parents are murdered, for the most part, Bruce Wayne is gone. Like, I think that's the one thing too that I love, and that's one of the things that I take away, and especially as I've gotten older with Batman, is that's, as they say in the Nolan movies, like, Bruce Wayne is your mask. Like, the real man, like Batman, is who you really are. And it's like, yeah, that's true to a T. He can't ever be out somewhere without thinking about something, or if something's on his mind, it completely occupies it. He'll do whatever it takes. So there, if you want a Avengers Endgame thing to throw in there, whatever it takes, he gets it done, man. He gets it done. So, but no, that's one of my favorite parts of this, is it's like, he's usually so right when he has those instincts. And in this turn, he was so wrong and completely underestimated his enemy and really paid the price for it. Can we talk about how much of a beating he takes in this first volume?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's nuts.
Just going back before we get to that, is just how he relied on his childhood to say, oh, I've researched him. Dude, you're a kid. You had no training whatsoever. You're the first person to point out when someone lacks the kind of knowledge at that point. And he's so confident. I mean, he does say he continued to search, but they don't go into that. So probably we'll give him credit that he just didn't rely on his childhood, but it just kind of comes off like that.
Definitely.
But yeah, getting to your next point, you're right. Not just physically beaten, emotionally.
Oh yeah.
Just he is. I mean, we see, getting back to maybe something we might cover on the podcast is the whole Nightfall. But I mean, this is even more severe of an attack.
Definitely. I would agree 100%. Like you said, it's an attack mentally as well as physically, and it's 50-50, I would say. Because a lot of the time I feel like Batman he goes off muscle memory. He's like, I'm used to this. I'll jump off a building. I don't think twice about it. I just do it. I break through this window. I don't think twice about it. However, everything that he's sort of seeing now, he's like, okay, all these clues maybe do lead to something. And I can't just use my brutality, my physical strength to sort of win, to sort of beat these folks. I mean, for example, he throws a freaking Talon, or the Talon, he's wrestling with him as he gets thrown out a window, and the Talon hits the ground. He gets right back up, kills an ambulance driver, and drives away. It's just like,
yeah.
Whoa, what the heck? And that was also one of my favorite moments of the books is when Bruce is on top of the Wayne building, and who is he with? Is it with
Lincoln
March? He's on top of there with him trying to get his sort of political strategy, and they're attacked by the Talon, and Bruce gets two of those throwing knives, and they get stuck right in his forearms. Now, oh man, I'm just trying to think too, because growing up, my dad was a police officer and a woman self-defense instructor, so I know all the pressure points, I know the main spots, and you could tell that's where Talon's throwing him. He's throwing him and he even explains it. He's like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He didn't just get me in my shoulder. He got it to where I can't move my arm. So or if I grab this ledge while I'm falling, I won't have the physical strength to actually hold on, and so on and so forth. So I love how, again, it's the precision of these assassins. And granted, I mean, they're assassins, they need to be precise, but still just are overwhelming to him, where he's like, whoa, okay, I maybe did take them for granted a little bit here. But that's definitely one of my favorite moments is, I mean, and especially the cold, excuse me, sorry, burped there. But the coldness in the Talon when he's driving away in the ambulance, you just see him, he's just you just look and you see the two yellow circles. And I love that throughout the book too. You just see those in certain moments where they're either spying on Bruce, or they're sort of hiding in the shadows, before he goes into the labyrinth. I love that when he's looking at the sewer wall and you see the two eyes behind him and you're like, no, behind you. You're trying to yell to him, guys, see this, come on, what are you doing? And it's just, it's wonderful. The use, sometimes less is more, man. Sometimes less is more, and it's very effective insofar as that's considered. But again, too, trying to figure out how can I take these guys down. Okay, I guess I can sort of go incognito. I'll go out as Bruce Wayne and just sort of see what's going on. Oh, they're trying to kill Bruce Wayne. Okay, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll try and be Batman for a little bit. And then the lack of sleep on top of everything else. We then learn Alfred, in order to get Bruce to sleep, has to give him a horse tranquilizer to get him to go to sleep, and that's all in his tea and stuff. And Dick is asking him, he's like, how much do you have to give him? And he tells him, and he's like, oh my God, Alfred, that's enough to put down a horse. And Alfred's just like, yeah, I think I know what I'm doing, so leave me alone. I like that too. I like that dynamic of and I love Alfred, man. I don't think there's ever been a poor iteration of Alfred, in my opinion. He just always knows what to say.
No.
And this here, he knows Bruce is going a little crazy. And just, it's, I guess not going a little crazy, but more in a sense of hasn't had sleep, hasn't been able to rest, hasn't been able to really think straight. And that just leads him down a whole road of yeah, well, you thought that was bad. Well, you're going to have about another 10 days down here, and going to really enjoy that. But no, man, there's so much in this book to unpack. So,
and it was interesting, the fact that, just looks at, Snyder as a writer at that point, when Bruce finally starts realizing the Court of Owls are real, is, talks about what an owl does. An owl doesn't nest. An owl takes the nest of others.
It does.
And that's when he starts discovering all these quote unquote owls nest all around the city, and that they have been there all this time, hiding, not necessarily in plain sight, but just they've been right underneath you, and they've been navigating everything around you.
Oh, definitely, man. And I mean, it ultimately comes to this, but when you're seeing him going through all these nests too, you're like, get out of there. Get out of there. What are you doing? It's either gonna, somebody's gonna come attack you, or you're gonna have 4 Talons come in and throw you out the window, or it's going to explode. And of course, in the most recent one he goes into, he's searching around, boom, hits a tripwire, and just boom. But man, these are the part of the reasons why I love Scott Snyder's writing so much, is I like how when he sets off that tripwire, it's the end of one of the issues, and then it picks back up in the next one. And I love how he just picks right up with it. He's like, most people think that what is it? It's something along the lines of most people think that the tripwire is the worst part, or something like that, or that initial click is the the worst part or whatever it is. But I like how he just goes in and he's like, no, this is what it actually, as you see Batman like trying to deal with this explosion, like running through, jumping to go, he like spears that Talon suit. And I just love the way he like categorically deduces everything down. He's just like, okay, this is people think this is the worst part. No, this is actually the worst part. No, and then people think that this could be, something, but it's actually this. And from experience, how many people have set off a tripwire before, and live to tell about it, live to talk about it, and so on and so forth. I just love that he's able to write his internal dialogue so well, and that you get so much of it that it makes you fight with Batman, in that like you're like, okay, well, what he's saying makes sense, but there's also all this other evidence. I don't know who to believe. What do I believe? Do I believe that it's just part of the nursery rhyme? Do I believe that they actually do exist? And so it's just interesting, and I love how the nursery rhyme really does. It's not, it helps the legend grow in a way, and I think that that's just a thing with me too. Like, I'm a huge fan of Agatha Christie, and the first book I ever read by her was And Then There Were None. And if you guys have ever read that, or if anybody knows that, it's based off of the 10 Little Indians nursery rhyme, which goes through and it talks about how it starts out with 10 little Indians and it gets all the way down to one. And each time you say like a line, it's like 10 little Indians, blah, 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 blah. And then, then there were 9. And then there were 8, and then there were 7, and something happens to each one of the things as it goes on. And it's interesting. So it's like they made a couple movies about it, but this to me reminded me very much of that. The first time I read it, I was like, oh, this is neat. And it's sort of a way to scare your kids a little bit if you want. Because it plays off of that, man. It plays off of that a little bit. Your fears, or that you might have, and for him, the thing, I mean, what do owls prey on? They prey on bats. So it's like that's a big part of this book too. And it's just he's not doing it for the sake of that as well. It's also intimidating. And I mean, he might have drawn inspiration. I don't know if he drew inspiration from Owlman from the Crime Syndicate. I'm sure he might have.
Okay.
But it still isn't. I like that he has both of those people now. He's got the this rich cabal on one side, and then he's got literally himself just as an owl in the Crime Syndicate, which is crazy. But no, that's I think, like, bringing it full circle, he just does such a great job writing in that sort of manner that keeps you suspenseful throughout, and just sort of gives you chills while you're reading it. But it also, like, I felt like when I was reading it this time, goes by like that. It just flies by, like, the reading. And and there's some other crazy moments in here too. I'm just trying not to mesh together like 2 and 3 in my head. I'm trying to stick to one. But like, let's talk about the Dick Grayson moment, man. Did you see that coming?
Oh no, I did not. I thought that was I was pretty shocked at how they kind of brought that in, and it worked. It was just like, wait a minute, what? He was anointed one. That's how they chose the talents, is from the circus.
Crazy. And how you find out about it is when him and Bruce are arguing, and Bruce punches him right in the mouth and knocks his tooth out. You're just like, whoa! And he found it, and you're just like, yeah, holy smokes, it's crazy. I also like that he gets sort of, I guess like is the wrong word, but when he shows back up to the cave and the Talon is there, and
how scared,
he's terrified
Bruce is. He's just, and I don't,
what's that doing here,
yeah. I don't think I've ever, someone can point it out to me, I just don't remember ever Batman being that scared.
No, and it's a great mix of all 3 elements, the writing, the art, and the inks. It's just spectacular moment of everything, because you feel it. You don't just see it, you feel it. Like, I think at least I did too when I turned the page and he's just like, what's he doing here? I was like, oh my god, like it's when a book can make you do that, dude. It just is. You can't explain it, man. You just can't.
Oh yeah, but I think the key thing with that, it's something simple, and it was more, I saw this read on. I can't believe I didn't pay attention to it, but it caught my eye, is just how in his cowl his lens is gone in one of his eyes. And that's a great point. And I think Capullo doing that, you get to really experience the fear, because I don't think if his cowl kind of stayed intact with the lenses, I don't think we'd get that effect as much. That seeing someone's eye and just seeing the scared when he's in the labyrinth for 10 days, and then you see his eye just like that terror. That was such a great choice to lose that lens. Oh,
absolutely, man. And you make a great point there. I completely forgot that he had lost the lens by that point. But it also, I think that that's what makes that part so interesting. Not to mention the non-conventional flip the comic sort of style that happens when you're in the labyrinth as well. So as Batman's going through this labyrinth from the Court of Owls after he's inspected in the sewer and he's sort of looking for him, and he gets thrown into this labyrinth, and they're like, welcome, Batman. And he's just like, all right, yeah, I'll find my way out of here. You guys think you're some big crazy thing. Well, you're not. Well, he's down there for 10 days, and he's sort of not, he's not really all together there. The first time you see him after he's been in the labyrinth, man, he's just like, you're right. That one lens is missing, and you just see his eyes are all bloodshot. His like skin is sort of gray underneath from just being down there and trying to navigate his way out. He's very jumpy because you have the talons that come in and out periodically. However, he's also led into these rooms where there's pictures of all the victims that have been down there, but then he enters another room where it's all of his photos in these pictures and of his current state, and he's just like, what in the hell is going on here? And you're thinking the same thing. You're like, whoa, like how's it gonna get out of here? But this is again what I love about Scott Snyder is he then, in order to help Batman escape from the labyrinth, goes through and he's like, no, I actually used my time down here nicely. While you were all just watching me sort of go away, I memorized the smell, the taste of things. You know, I know what this is made out of, and I know what the breaking point of each one of these things are because I'm freaking Batman. So I know the breaking point of granite. And, you know, if this was made out of just one substance, it wouldn't break. But since it's made out of both, there's that weak spot in between. But boom, and he sets that charge and blasts a hole in the ground where he's able to sort of escape from. And that's how they pick up the Talon too, because they find him in the water and the Talon next to him. And it's Harper, I believe, Harper Rowe, I think is her last name.
Yes.
Who finds him and actually shocks him, gives him one of those, I can't remember, defibrillator. Sorry. I'm like, defibrillator. And just boom, gets him, and he's just back up, and he's like, what are you doing? And I love, he doesn't even say she's just like, yeah, you're welcome. Jeez. You know, but it's cool because she brought Batman back in that sense, and he's definitely bested by the court. And this is only, like we said, we're just scratching the surface here, and as far as what the court does to him, and how he sort of takes a beating again, both mentally and physically here. And man, when he leaves, and then the court's just like, he got out of here. That's pretty interesting. Well, time to go to plan A.1. And it's like everybody else, sort of rise, and you're like, wait, what are you talking about? And then you see all these red like caskets that were there before that. Batman was sort of just like, okay, here's all the caskets. These things are just kind of crazy looking. Boom. They all open, and we see that there's a lot more Talons where that came from. But one of the things that's awesome that you learn about is they also tell you a little bit about the weaknesses of the Talons as well, where in order to stop them, you essentially just need extreme cold, and because otherwise they have a healing factor, a healing ability. I don't remember the name of the serum that they said that they use, or if they've mentioned it yet, but it definitely gives the Talons some super strength, but it also gives them the ability to heal quickly, and they have one purpose and one purpose only, and that's just to go attack their target, which is Gotham, and now in this case Batman and the Bat family. And he's going to need sort of every little bit of help that he can get, but I'm just trying to see if there's another moment here. Yeah, that's
one thing, like you kind of hinted towards, is just the way you turn the book at one point. And when I first read it, I just thought, man, what a cool idea, just to go down a little the insanity that Batman and Bruce are going through at that point. And I'm doing research for the podcast tonight, looking at, Capullo apparently had been begging Snyder to start giving more room so he can have a little bit of fun, because apparently Snyder was giving full 30-page scripts that didn't give Capullo enough time to kind of experiment. Right. So with issue 5, Snyder gave him his room he wanted, and he said, I want to visualize. You want the reader to experience it. I want to visualize. I want to change the pages around. I want them to do that. And apparently they had to fight with DC to get that done, because they thought people would think that would be a printing error. And I never ever thought that. I didn't even know that was a fight. And Snyder backed him. He said, no, I support him in this. And Capullo wrote apparently a passionate email, even quoting Steve Jobs. He said, stay foolish. And they eventually agreed to this. And they they both kind of say this was the moments. Capullo says that he and Snyder felt like a team, and you really, again, at that moment, you really feel the destabilization, the insanity that Batman and Bruce are going through.
Absolutely, man. And especially when you get to the moment where he runs into those like zombie versions of his parents. Oh my God, like how they deteriorate in his arms when he goes to hug them and say goodbye. It's just like, wow, man, to be able to draw that, it's nutty. But you know what? Hey man, it just goes to show you got to fight for what you believe in and what you think works. And sometimes those in the position of power don't always know what's best. And at that point, sometimes you gotta just keep fighting. And I think that the book is all the more better for it. And the only issue I could see that coming up with, and I believe it's happened to some people, is the electronic issues. And I don't have an electronic issue of this.
True.
And so when you go to like turn your Kindle and it turns with it, you're like, oh man, what the heck? But
we'll have to see what DC Universe does. That's a good thing. I'll have to see, jump on DC Universe and just kind of see exactly how do they rectify that issue.
That's actually a great idea. I might throw that up on the Xbox later and see what that looks like. But it definitely was. That's the only thing I could really think of. But as far as that goes, it's nice, man, because then it just like there's something about seeing somebody like take their face in a book and just like smush the book in their face. Like I love that, dude. I love seeing people do that where they're just like, huh, what's that thing? And then just sort of like looking at it, because that's the way I felt, at least when I picked this up, and I was just like, oh, this is so cool. This is so unconventional. It just makes you appreciate the story that much more. But you can tell, man, in those pages that they turn those pages around, Capullo goes bananas. Like the detail in it is phenomenal. Not to mention just all the little pencils and little inks, but then in some of them there's not really a whole lot there to go off of. It's a silhouette and then just eyes. He just phenomenal job there by him. And like you said, I'm glad that they fought for it as well. And man, their bond has been pretty much inseparable since then, and I'm glad to see that they won that out. I would like to shake the hand of the editor who was just like, okay, fine, you guys can do that. I would be like, okay, good, you guys made the right decision there. Let your artists, let them create, and good things will happen. Some bad things will happen sometimes, but that's okay. You got to take a couple of licks every now and again too to make some headway. But no, man, it's bananas. So this whole book to me, man, I could sit here and tell you this moment was great. This moment was great. I love this whole book in its entirety. And, not to bring any negativity on your show or anything, or to talk about anything else, but like Batman's my favorite character of all time, man. He just is and has been for a long time. And to be quite frank, the most recent run of Batman since Rebirth has started has just not done it for me. And it's just been really disappointing. So like be able to go back and read this is just like, yes, this is my Batman story. This is my Batman story. This is the one I relate to. Like, this is the one that I love. I can pick it up and just gorgeous, man. It's just the writing, the art, the everything, man. The beats when there's no words. There's just everything flows together seamlessly, and it's just I understand that's not going to happen with all books, but I'm just not getting that in the Batman right now, and it just kind of is disappointing to me. But hey, that's why we have all these different iterations of these different characters. They mesh with different people's ideologies and their ideals, and some people don't like this run, and that's okay for those who don't. You guys are totally entitled to your opinion, and we're entitled to ours. So if we don't happen to like something, we don't really, but we don't like to hop on that for too long. But it's just one of those things, man, where it just goes to show I love this run so much, and from Court of Owls all the way up through Super Heavy and the epilogue, it just is it's phenomenal. So I very much appreciate that and this whole book in its entirety.
Hey everyone, before we go to the next topic, we are going to head into some ads that help the Geek Ultimate Alliance keep the lights on. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they sometimes can be a bit loud. So I want to give you a 3 count in order to give you the opportunity to turn your volume down before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be back in a little bit. No, definitely. And again, like one of the reasons I say in the intro episode to this is that one of the reasons I want to do this podcast is because there's always a source material. You don't like one person's interpretation, right. I guarantee you there's going to be something else you can always go back to. I just love that people do get the opportunities to put their own stamp on it. And some people like it, some people don't. And that's what makes, I think, the comics, graphic novels in general, just people can have a way to express themselves and put a spin on something that I never would have thought would have been possible.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And very eloquently said. And I think that that's true for everything. It just, I think, tends to get hyper scrutinized with comics sometimes because the medium is so, artistically driven. And I'm not saying that other mediums aren't, or like, novels and all that jazz, but, you got the art and everything here. So it's multiple factors going into everything. And there's the human element of that. And that's what makes it so great. And that's also what makes the differences involved in it. That's where you get these different writing styles. Because if somebody writes one way, there's a person out there who writes the exact opposite way. The way one person colors is the completely opposite way another different person colors. Or like, and it's the same thing throughout all mediums, man. Somebody's cinematography is going to be different than somebody else's cinematography, and it's one of those things that makes art great. And even relaying it to music, certain composers, certain people like certain composers over others, and that's totally fine. Hey, whatever floats your boat, that's great. It's just, don't dwell on it if you don't really, have a whole lot of things that are nice to say about it. But that's what I meant to say when I really brought everything up is just that it's great because even if you aren't necessarily digging something, like you said, you can go back and you can read different iterations of these characters. You can watch different iterations of these characters. And it just is one of those things that it's wonderful that characters can be reinvented for you over and over again, which makes them feel like brand new characters, whilst you still get that sense of euphoria and what's the word I'm looking for? Crap, I lost it. It's okay though. It's all right.
It will,
but it's one of those things, man. Comics have done a lot for me, and I appreciate all the people that have put the time into it. And so, to be able to give back to them by just saying thank you is the least that we could do.
No, definitely. So kind of want to bring the episode to a close with a few final questions for you. I think you've kind of said like why it's one of your favorites. I want to know kind of what first, kind of a two-part question. What impact did this kind of first part of this arc have on you personally?
Man, it got me back into collecting. It got me into finally saying, I make my own money now. I can collect these books. It also brought me closer to myself. In that, it was a hard time for me right after college. I just entered a relationship with my fiance approximately 6 months before we moved to New York. And, I was new in the city, so I was a little lonely. And this just, it gave me a regular place that I could go. I could talk with strangers in the aisles, just about random things. And it's just that human interaction, man. It sort of got me back into that, like, you know what, man? There's a great song in Shrek the Musical called Let Your Freak Flag Fly. And that sort of is just, was the thing for me. It's like, let your freak flag fly, man. What you like is what you like. And there are going to be other people that are out there that equally enjoy it as much. And there are going to be people that are out there that don't. But you know what? Through everything, your friends are your friends. They'll love you for who you are. And if they don't, then they're not really your friends. But also, like, there's a community of people out there that are, equally as invested as you are. And it just is a great way to, for me, it helped me sort of find a sense of identity. And it also got me back really into just being able to strike up casual conversations with strangers and really just sort of get involved in a community that I wasn't sort of able to get in that aspect of, like, even my neighborhood in New York. And I would say that to anybody, to be honest with you, in any town, anywhere. If you guys have a local comic shop, even if you can only go in and get one book, even if it's $2, $3 here, even if you can't spend anything, it's nice to go in and just have that interaction with the people that are in the store. Obviously, if somebody's looking like they don't want to talk to you, probably, maybe not. Don't go ahead and, just jump right in. Maybe ask them how they're doing first or something. But you'll find for the most part, everybody at comic shops are more than willing to strike up a conversation with you. And just because they're there for the same reason you are. They have a love and affinity for favorite characters. And who knows, you might get introduced to a new character, or you might make a new friend while you're there too. So it really has brought me back into the world of comics, man, and my life has forever changed since. I don't know that I would be doing the podcast now, and I don't know that I would be as happy as I am in my life. And honestly, man, to be able to say at 27 that, I'm a very happy man and have a wonderful life. There's a lot of 27-year-olds that are out there that aren't able to say that. Comics is a huge part of why, and I have to thank Court of Owls for, sort of getting me back into it. So that's, my long form way of answering that first part of your question.
Yeah, that's definitely perfect at that point. The other part of this we're going to explore in the other parts of the impact of this release beyond. So we'll kind of hold that off maybe until the final part of the impact of the whole arc of the Court of Owls. How would you recommend this book to someone that hasn't read this?
I made sure that I typed this up before, so I wouldn't give you an answer that contradicts itself. A timeless classic that gives you everything you want in a Batman story. Badass adventure, puzzling detective work, gadgets and gizmos galore, favorites from the Rogues Gallery and the Bat family, all while facing a new threat. So it's sort of everything you want. So that's sort of how I would put it to anybody who's never read this before.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to do it. So, like we kind of said, this is Jordan. Actually, when I reached out to him, I asked him, when he said Court of Owls, I said, "Are we looking at all three parts? Are we looking at just the first volume?" And he recommended that let's do it all, but kind of break it up into parts to do kind of a mini series with this. So this is just part 1 of 3. We'll get Jordan back on soon, and we'll look at part 2 would be the Night of the Owls, and followed by the City of the Owls.
Yes, sir.
And we'll kind of I thank you, Jordan, for volunteering to do that. That's awesome. It's a great kind of series. I'm sure we'll probably be doing that with other guests that have when we look at arcs like this, that it's kind of hard just to break it up and kind of leave it as
yeah,
is.
absolutely, man. And while you were saying that, I was over here, I'm pumping my fists because I'm jazzed to talk about it with you, man. And just before we sort of close this out, I do want to thank you again for having me on. And it's been an absolute pleasure getting to talk this arc with you. And man, I just want to throw this out there to you too. Definitely doesn't feel like episode 1 of somebody's podcast. And so I just want to say,
thank you.
Kudos to you. Great job, man. You did a great job. Your questions are thought provoking and great person to have a conversation with. And I think you're going to be really great at this. So, keep it up, man. Don't pay attention to numbers. Don't pay attention to anything like that. Do it for you, and just do it for, yourself and for the community and everything like that. Just, keep at it, man. I think you're going to see some big things coming along with it. So stick with it, my man. And, I can't thank you enough for having me on, and I'm excited to come back on for parts 2 and 3, man. It's going to be a good conversation.
No, thank you so much. That really means a lot coming from you, and does mean a lot. Don't take that lightly at all. And one person we're probably character we kind of just mentioned, but he doesn't have much, but it's going to come into the big part, is Lincoln March. So we didn't delve too much into him, but there's not much to delve into him outside he's a mayoral candidate that gets attacked, but there's more than meets the eye with Mr. March.
Yes, there's a whole probably nice little 30-minute conversation behind that. So we will definitely be delving into Lincoln March here soon. But and just give you guys a little surprise, a little sneak peek. I was not anticipating that at all. And I don't know if you were either, but it was one of those things when you see it, you're like, oh boy, here we go. It's on, man. It's on. So I'm excited to talk about those with you, my man.
No, it's great, and I look forward to this. And no, I definitely am doing this not for followers. I mean, I love to build an audience and things like that, but I'm just doing this because like you said, I love talking to people about this. And I think you and Chris kind of said it when I had wrote in one time, like, we can talk to our significant others about this and they'll kindly listen, but they don't understand, fully at that point. So I said, this is exactly why I'm doing the podcast like this, so I can have conversations like this with people who enjoy the genre as much as I do. So before we end the show, I'm kind of talk about how people can follow you, and go ahead and plug your podcast
thanks,
again.
Man. If you guys want to get in touch with me directly, you can get in touch with me on Twitter and Instagram at Jordan Funky. If you guys want to contact me through the show, it is DC Comics Squadcast. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us all over the internet pretty much. But our Twitter handle for that is at DC Squadcast. And again, part of the Suicide Squadcast slash Squadcast Media Network that has Suicide Squadcast with Tim and Scott. It's got DC TV Squadcast and Fans Without Borders with Brent and Ray, where they, sort of talk about DC TV, and then they kind of talk about all things, Star Trek, Star Wars, Lego movies, everything, man. It's all over the place. And then Suicide Squadcast kind of gives you your main movie news, some of the TV news and stuff that's going on there. And those guys also do some other stuff. And then our show, DC Comics Squadcast, where Chris and I talk about mainly the main Justice League characters. However, I think we're starting to sort of break that down a little bit and just trying to add in books that we're very much enjoying and other people have sort of requested for a while now too. We're trying to make that more of a thing. And also we do have a Patreon. If you guys, want to go ahead and donate to that, feel free. If not, we appreciate you guys listening anyway. So, if you haven't listened, head on over, and it might be something you enjoy. If not, and just stick here with Chris, and I promise you, he's going to have some really great episodes coming in. I think you're all going to very much enjoy it. But that's pretty much where you can follow me and find me. And please, I am always down for conversation. And if you don't feel comfortable enough just sending me a tweet on Twitter, please feel free to send me a DM or something like that too. I am more than happy to answer questions or give anybody an assist or anything like that. So, that's where you can find me. Thanks, man.
Perfect. No, thank you, Jordan. And I kind of established some things after our intro episodes, but you can follow, I've established our podcast on Twitter. It's at Finest Believers. So again, at Finest Believers is going to be the podcast handle. And me personally at Chris Balga, Chris CHRIS. And then Balga, B as in boy, ALGA. And you can email the podcast at world'sfinesttruebelievers@gmail.com. Feel free to tweet or email. Love, again, having you, if you want to be a guest, feel free to tweet at me, message the podcast, email the podcast, give me feedback, ask questions. Again, like I said, this is a first for me, so I'll take all feedback and additions you want. And again, if you want a guest, I'd love to have you on. If we've never met before, it doesn't matter. As I said, this is a podcast for all publications, so it's not just going to be DC and Marvel. I look forward to someone proposing something that I've never read before, and one of my upcoming guests has proposed that, so it's going to be very exciting for me to delve into something I have not looked into, so I'm very excited about that. Remind just to review the podcast on wherever you get podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, whatever you do. Love the reviews, look for them. And just want to say again, Jordan, thank you for coming on, and thank you, listeners, and we'll be seeing you real soon. Bye-bye.